With us in studio is Senator Chester Humphrey. Good morning. Welcome to Daybreak Grenada.
Yeah, good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm fine.
Good, good. Right. Okay, so we've just learned that you're proposing a bill to make changes to the labor code. Why exactly are you bringing this forward now, and what does it entail?
Well, the amendment is an amendment to Cap 15 of the Labor Relations Act of 1999, and it specifically focuses on Section 66(1). I am proposing an amendment to the Act by way of a private member's bill, because I'm an independent senator. I'm not on the government side, and it's a highly unusual maneuver, but certainly allowable under the rules of the Senate, that a private member's bill can be brought. The reason for this bill is simply to address a problem which arose during the 2 months lockout of the brewery workers. You may recall that the brewery workers and the Union Technical and Allied Workers Union took strike action on the 13th of December. That strike action was pursuant to getting the negotiations for a new collective agreement resolved speedily, and not to retrace the steps of the last agreement, which took 6 years to negotiate. The workers withdrew their labor on the 13th of December and ended the strike on the 19th. On the 19th, some workers reported to work. In fact, some workers were called out to work on the 19th. But on the 20th, when the bulk of the workers showed up to work, as is normal in the context of Grenada and most of the Eastern Caribbean, when a strike ends, workers show up to work. The Ansa Makal majority shareholder that's in control of the brewery then commenced a lockout of the workers. Ansa Makal maintained that their action was not a lockout, that they were pursuing their rights under Section 66(1). And Section 66(1), if I may read it in its entirety and in its fullness, so that your listeners get a sense of what it is we're trying to do. Section 66(1) of Cap 15 of 1999, its marginal note is the right to return to work after strike action, so that workers are protected in law in respect of their contracts of employment when a strike is ended. And it says, if an employee who has participated in a strike in conformity with this act, who has been locked out, or who has been locked out by his or her employer, presents himself or herself for work not more than 2 working days after the end of the strike or lockout, the employer shall, within a reasonable period, reinstate such employees. Right? The Ansa Makal group argued that they had not locked out the workers, that they were not reinstating the workers because they were exercising a right given to them, that reinstatement ought to take place within a reasonable time. And so far, so good. But we have witnessed in practice that the non-reinstatement of the employees went on for 2 months. Now, obviously, when Parliament passed this legislation, it could not have contemplated that the exercise of reasonable time would amount to a duration of 2 months. And that is a 2 months lockout from your work without pay, meaning 120-something workers and their families were without income. The employer signed an agreement in which he acknowledged that the workers were not dismissed, 2, that the workers were still employees of the company. Yet, under this provision of reasonable time, the employer argued that reasonable time is a matter for his personal interpretation. Well, quite obviously, law can't be written like that, and that was not the intention of Parliament. Not only that, when you trace the historical occurrences and you look at the trajectory, historically, and it has never happened before, where a strike ends and workers are not almost reinstated immediately. In fact, Ansa McCall, on the 6th, I think it is, of January, signed an agreement with the union, actually on the 17th day of January. Ansa McCall signed an agreement with the union in which it says, whereas the employer is not prepared, that's in the preamble to the agreement, whereas the employer is not prepared to reinstate its employees represented by the union until all of the issues in dispute between the parties have been negotiated and a comprehensive agreement reached in respect of all issues, any reinstatement of the said employees shall be within 24 hours. Now, the fact that Ansa McCall signed this and in fact reinstated all the employees within 24 hours tells you that there were no practical operational necessities that supported this failure to reinstate. And what arose was the pursuit of a private agenda, which obviously could not have been contemplated by the law, because what the law says, if a strike ends and a worker presents himself within 2 days, then he must be reinstated within a reasonable time. And so what we are attempting to do is to close the loophole which allows an abuse of the law and of the process. In other words, the law attempts to protect the rights of a worker, but the term within a reasonable period has been abused by an employer. And therefore, the amendment that we are seeking to bring, or not we seeking, that we have brought, and which will be debated today, attempts to close that loophole, to give the law the kinds of effect that was intended by the lawmakers. And simply put, all we are doing is as follows. The explanatory note to this amendment reads, the bill seeks to amend section 66(1), which I've just read to you, to limit its abuse by employers in light of the lockout of the Grenada Breweries Limited employees, which commenced on December the 19th and continued. The amendment seeks to create and enhance good industrial relations practices. And the reason for this is, don't forget that the union had threatened a national strike and was on the verge of a national strike. The union gave consideration to the effects on the economy and the fact that many persons not involved in this strike at all would have been affected. Once we had declared a national strike and moved in that direction, it would have meant, for example, that all the cruise ships would cancel Grenada as a port of call. So it had significant implications. And the union gave consideration to the appeals coming primarily from the hotel sector and other businesses, that if we move to a national strike, we would not be affecting Ansa McCall. What we would affect is Grenadian businesses who are not part of this dispute. And that, in fact, sounded more than reasonable to the ear of the union. And in fact, we heeded that, that request, right, in order, because we are in a difficult economic situation. So what we are attempting to do is to correct this loophole in the law, which would stop further abuse and which will close the potential for serious economic disruption. And all we are doing is as follows. We are amending the act to read the following way. We are deleting the words within a reasonable period and replacing it with the words within a period of 7 days. So it's a very simple, straightforward amendment that closes the door on the abuse by any employer going forward into the future. And this amendment attempts to create a more stable industrial situation. Let me say here that the amendment does not disturb the rights of the employer at all, because the employer can still commit a lockout and the union can still commit a strike. We are not seeking to disturb the rights of the employer. All we are saying is this: the general practice of industrial relations in Grenada historically has never seen an employer failing to immediately reinstate workers once a strike has ended. As a matter of fact, for all the strikes that I know of, the employer wants the worker to start back working, else he's losing business and he's losing money. In the case of Ansa McCall, according to Dr. Patrick Antoine, their losses for that period of 2 months amounted to close to $4 million, between $3 to $4 million, according to him. I don't know that there's any other employer in Grenada other than Ansa McCall that can sustain such a heavy loss. So that there is really no objective interest in maintaining a non-reinstatement of workers once a strike has ended. And therefore, we think that Parliament needs to, in a sense, give a definitiveness to reasonable time and don't leave it to the whims and fancy of an individual. And that's what this amendment is all about.
What would you say to Mr. Alan Brzezinski? He had an article on GrenadaBroadcast.com, and I quote that this bill seeks to change the rules in favor of one side because Tau lost a battle but is determined to win a war. And he also goes on to say that you bypass the Labor Code Board. So what would you say to Mr. Brzezinski on his comments?
Well, I think Mr. Brzezinski is looking at this matter very narrow-minded. This bill, as I said, does not disturb the right of any employer. All the bill seeks to do is to close a loophole. And let me put it to you this way. Our Senate is comprised of three socioeconomic sector representations within its Senate. Labor has a representative, myself. The private sector or business class have a representative, Senator Chris Diali. And the farmers have a representative, Senator Keith Clouden. The rules of the Senate and the rules of Parliament allow for a private member's bill to be brought before the House. The opposition, for example, can bring a bill to amend an act or to bring a bill to create a completely new act. That's allowable under our rules. So I don't quite know what Mr. Brzezinski is talking about. Additionally, I must say that the president of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce does not seem to share the view of Mr. Brzezinski, because I heard her on the media up to last night repeating that she has no difficulty with the amendment. She has no difficulty with the amendment. They are not opposed to the amendment. What she has a difficulty with is the process. And I can't understand for the likes of me what this difficulty of which they speak. The process is allowable. It is fairly straightforward. Every parliamentarian that is on the non-government side has a right to bring a private member's bill. There are rules which govern this. And if the private sector wish to bring any amendment, there's nothing which says that the private sector must consult the labor movement or anybody else. When we sought to have the government remove income tax on severance pay, we didn't consult the private sector. We argued that to pay severance pay in a period where you have a serious downturn in the economy, where your economy has contracted by about 10% over a 3-year period, right, or 4-year period, where there is inelasticity in the labor market, workers who have lost their jobs and are going home with some sort of compensation for years' work ought not to pay taxes. We think it's unfair. We think it is bad economic policy. And we have been pressing the government for the last 2.5 to 3 years. They eventually did give the amendment. In fact, the act which amends the income tax, the bill which amends the income tax act to allow that is now before the Senate. So I don't know precisely what Mr. Brzezinski is talking about. As I said, this amendment does not disturb the rights of any employer. All it does is it says what reasonable time is. That's all it says.
Right. The workers of the Grenada the Grenada Breweries Limited, are they better off than they were last year?
That's a question. It depends on how you look at it. It depends on which side of the river you stand. If you stand on one side of the river, the sun could be setting. And at that very moment, if you could be transposed to the other side of the river, it's rising. So it depends on how you look at it. What I can say to you is this, that what the agreement in full has resulted in the following. The workers will get 8 months pay, cash lump sum of 8 months pay. In addition to that, they will receive approximately 2.5 months of profit sharing. So that would be 10.5 months pay. And on top of that, they got a 9% increase in pay, which would result in a 6% retroactive pay over a period spanning 18 months, which will be another month and a half. So sometime in March, the workers will receive approximately 1 year's pay. In return, the workers there is some adjustment to the profit sharing formula. So as I said, it depends on how you look at it. Any worker who gets 1 year's pay would certainly be a happy person. Now, the workers have been locked out for a period of 2 months without pay. Yes, the union gave salary support and it cost us a tremendous amount of money. But nothing worthwhile is gained without some sort of struggle and sacrifice.
So you don't regret calling the workers out at all?
No. If we had to do it again, would we do it the same way? Probably not. But we don't have any regrets. We have defended the workers and their rights. As I said, we've put a significant sum of money into the hands of the employees. Brewery workers have been averaging for the last 8 or so years, they've been averaging 3.25 to 4 months pay in profit sharing. Essentially, the proposal means that they will get upfront about 3 or so years upfront pay of profit sharing. So that come March, April, workers, as I said to you before, will receive approximately 1 year's pay. In return, we've had to adjust the profit sharing somewhat. So there is a bit of a trade-off.
Right. Has the GBL dispute given employers a template which weakens the impact of strike action?
Well, I don't think so, because I don't know of any employer in Grenada that can absorb a loss of $3.4 million, which is what Dr. Antoine said to the media, that they have not precise the loss, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of $3 million, possibly $4 million. I don't know of any group of employers in Grenada that could sustain any such loss. So it's a fallacy to peddle the view. I know that many employers have been celebrating that the workers have been locked out. The employers remain silent while Ansa McCall, a massive conglomerate, had been able to, in a sense, starve the workers and their families, and people have celebrated on that. But I wish to let them know that during this process as well, the class consciousness of the workers have been sharpened, and workers have a better understanding of what it is to fight capital and capitalism. So the employers who wish to celebrate, they're doing so prematurely. And if they believe that this is a route that they will all travel, then they're in for a serious and bumpy ride. I know of very few employers in this economy who can challenge the Technical and Allied Workers Union in the way in which Ansa McCall did. So Ansa McCall may be a dinosaur that has passed by in modern times, but let not the Grenada employer be fooled. The Grenada employer will have a rough ride if he attempts to do this. And let that message go out to all and sundry. Yeah?
Right. Wow. I feel like I was an employer here, boy. I start to shiver. But let's look at the man, Senator Chester Humphrey. This whole issue with the GBL, it went on for a long time. Were there any high points, any low times, and how did you feel personally with it all? Well,
I agonize. I've never removed myself from the emotional and psychological orbit of the workers. I feel the workers' pulse. That's what I do. I'm a trade unionist, not by, well, some people believe it's an elective choice. It's not. I'm a trade unionist simply because I believe what I do. I could not imagine myself doing something different. Although in my earlier formative years, I wanted to do medicine. That's what I wanted to do. And probably if I had to live my life over again, I would probably do medicine and be a medical trade unionist. But we do what we do because we believe in what we're doing. Our role and mission is to serve the working class. We have a working class ideological outlook. Our trade union is a class-conscious trade union. We're not just professional trade unionists. We are trade unionists who are committed to the life of the working man and woman. We believe we are the inheritors of the great revolutionary struggle started by Fedor, carried on by Gary, by Morris Bishop and others. That's our view. And we have a worldview that puts the worker at the epicenter of everything. We don't believe that capital is supreme. We believe that, yes, capital has a place, but beyond it all is a wealth created by the workers. And we believe that the workers have an ordained right to share in that wealth. We don't believe that wealth is the exclusive domain of those who own capital. The ownership of capital itself don't create wealth. What creates wealth is the labor power of the employees. And what represents profit is the excess wealth created, the surplus value created by that labor. It's the only element in the production process that creates wealth. Nothing else does. And I don't believe in this almost, what would I say, messianic view that profit is divine and the divine right of those who own capital. We don't share that view. We reach accommodations from time to time in the process of improving the livelihood of working men and women. We would reach accommodation from time to time. But our trade union and the way in which we practice our art is fundamentally different, right? And it's driven by a different set of motivations.
Right. I'm just going to ask you one more personal question before we wrap up. Take me back to when you're lying on the ground. Didn't you get a little scared that somebody might step on you or a vehicle might pass or something?
No, absolutely not.
No?
No.
You have complete confidence in people that nobody would have done you anything?
Well, I wasn't making that calculation at that time,
okay.
to be quite frank. I didn't make that calculation. When I saw the footage afterwards, I was wondering, well, what did go through your mind?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You had something you were saying?
No. I just, okay. I mean, this is the first time Barry, I don't know why Barry kept me off this program, but that's all right. This is actually my first
Of course. This
here.
is your official welcome. Of course, you're always welcome to come back again.
Well, when you invite me, I don't normally go places where I'm not invited.
Okay, great.
Save and except when it's the Jenny Fleck before royalty, I don't.
Okay, all right. But thank you so much for joining us. It was indeed a pleasure having you on the show.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Well, the Senate meets today. The matter will be debated. And of course, the workers would be keenly interested to see those politicians who cast a vote for the amendment, those who abstain, and those who vote against.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.